This is not something we caused. The president caused this.
I mean, what do you think is like it's the main holdup? You know what I mean? It's like a kid coming to you and saying that, mommy, can you buy me that toy? And you said, okay, I'll buy you the toy, and you have the money. I'll buy you the toy for.
This had caused really serious repercussions, and that's how we ended up going back to the court.
Oh wow! I believe that you coming in and just giving us, what you've given us, it just completes everything. I don't think that after this I would have to interview anyone about this. I think this is complete. Welcome to another episode of the Talk Podcast with Andile. Without wasting any time, today I've got a special guest. Her name is Demi. Demi is an attorney. Is one of the attorneys on the Section 27 case, the blind SA case that is currently in court. If I'm correct, right, Demi?
That's right.
In court against the president. With regarding the copyrights amendment bill, which is either we've endorsed it as our association, as you know, guys, that we've endorsed it. We sent our letter to the Recreate to endorse the because we support it 100%. So today we've got Demi. So we will be looking on things from the law perspective, because last week we had the president of Blind SA, de Klerk, what's her name again? Christo, yes, Christo. I'm so bad. Christo de Klerk, yeah. So without wasting any time, Demi, would you mind just introducing yourself, just to let everyone know like who you are and just your background and stuff like that?
Thanks so much, Andile. Yes, so my name is Demichelle Petherbridge. You're welcome just to call me Demi for short. I'm an attorney in the Education Rights Unit at Section 27. I'm also the attorney representing Blind SA on behalf of Section 27 as well. So we've worked very closely with them on this Blind SA matter for a couple of years now.
Oh, fantastic. So like, how did everything begin? Like, how did it start? Did Blind SA reach out to you guys, or you guys, knew about them, and or maybe you reached out to them and say, hey, listen, we're willing to help you? How did everything come about?
So this happened around about the end of 2021, where Blind SA had approached Section 27 to talk to them, talk to us about the challenges that persons who are blind and visually impaired were facing, particularly with this issue of trying to access reading materials, and that the particular problem was the legislation, was the Copyright Act that was hindering this, and how we could support them in this.
Okay, cool, great. So, like, how did everything begin? Like, in terms of like, what was your first step? You had your first meeting with them. They've explained who they are and what they want and what they're expecting from. So, what was the first step from you guys? On this matter.
So after we had gathered all our information and had analyzed the law and were sure that there is really a violation here, and had, of course, spoken to Blind SA and various people about the impact that this was having, we decided to launch litigation. And this happened in the High Court. And I'm not too sure if you'd like me to speak a little bit about the High Court matter.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Sure. All right. So we launched litigation in the Pretoria High Court, representing Blind SA in 2021. In 2021. And in that matter, Blind SA was challenging the Copyright Act, certain provisions in the Copyright Act, because of the discriminatory effect it was having on persons who are blind and visually impaired, and it was limiting their access to accessible formats. And accessible formats just means books that are in formats that people who are blind and visually impaired can read, like Braille or large print, or even an audiobook. And what was happening with this piece of legislation, so the copyright legislation, and I'm sure your listeners know this already, it's that piece of legislation that regulates copyright in South Africa. It's very extensive, it's very technical, but part of that speaks about the rights of artists and musicians and composers and authors, what their rights are over their work, and if anyone wants to access that work, how they're allowed to do it, what they may and may not do. And what the Copyright Act said was that if you wanted to convert a book, for example, into a different format, like Braille or large print, you had to get the consent of the copyright holder. But this was not a very simple thing to do for a lot of people. It assumes you know who the copyright holder is. Sometimes it's the author, sometimes they sell this and you have the rights and you have to find that out. But also, even after you've managed to find out who the copyright holder is and send your request, often these requests were refused or just ignored. And what the Copyright Act was saying is that if you proceed to convert your book, for example, into an accessible format without the consent of the copyright holder, you'd be criminalized, you were fined, or even imprisoned if you took this step.
Mm,
And this was really such an absurd situation because for sighted people, you can just walk into a library and borrow a book. You can go
mm,
into a bookstore and buy one. But for persons who are blind or visually impaired, they would have to buy this book, are not able to read it, want to convert it, and are criminalized if they can't get that consent. And that's why we were in the High Court in Pretoria. Um, and the court agreed with us. And they said, we agree that there are sections in the Copyright Act that should be declared unconstitutional and invalid. And so they did that for us. And in terms of the rules of court, whenever you have legislation that is declared invalid, you need to get this confirmed by the Constitutional Court. And that's how we ended up in the Constitutional Court, really just for these confirmation proceedings. And so we were in the Constitutional Court. And the court actually agreed with us as well. They
mm,
had declared certain sections of the Copyright Act unconstitutional and invalid, but they did something very interesting in terms of the relief they gave us. So they said, all right, we declare these parts of the act invalid, and that literally means we put a line through it. That part of the legislation will not operate, but you cannot just leave a gap in the law like that. Sure, to now make accessible format copies without the consent of the copyright holder is no longer illegal, but there's no framework to explain how people who are blind and visually impaired should do this now. What is that process? What they may or may not do? What are the rights of creatives in the scenario? So
mm,
it wasn't as simple as just putting a line through the legislation. The court said, all right, so we will put that on hold. We will suspend that for 24 months, and we will give Parliament 2 years to fix that defect and to put that framework in place. And in the meantime, the court crafted its own framework, Section 13A, that it said needed to be read into the Copyright Act. And that 13A provided that framework to say, this is who may make accessible format copies without the consent of the copyright holder. This is the circumstances that must exist. These are the conditions. So it was all very clear while Parliament was fixing this for 2 years. Parliament was already in the process of revising the Copyright Act, and they were doing this through something called the Copyright Amendment Bill, which was overhauling a couple of things in terms of copyright already. And they had done a really great job of trying to cure this defect by putting in something called Section 19D. Section 19D was going to be this exception for people who are blind and visually impaired, and they were working on this, and it was through this that they were going to make this solution. So they did their job, and in February last year, both houses of Parliament approved this Copyright Amendment Bill that included the Section 19D. And 19D was amazing because it even went further than what the court had asked, it went further than what Blind SA had asked. It said all persons with disabilities, not just persons who are blind or visually impaired, persons with disabilities can now make accessible formats without the consent of the copyright holder in a particular way. And that gave the president about 7 years to sign, 7 months to sign. And by the expiry of the 2 year deadline, he hadn't signed. He just
mm.
hadn't signed. And this had caused really serious repercussions. And that's how we ended up going back to the Concord.
Oh wow. So so now what's the story with the Concord? If you can maybe if you would like to maybe elaborate more in terms of like the legal side of things. So you approach the Concord that the president,
Mm.
is taking his time to sign the bill. And what?
That was exactly that. It was a bold step to challenge the president directly to say that he had an obligation. Yes, the Concord had said Parliament has got 24 months, but there was an expectation that the president would do his part. There is a lot at stake here. There is a whole
Mm,
context at stake here. And what had happened at the expiry of the deadline was that suspension of the declaration of invalidity, so that striking the stripe through the legislation happened. But there was nothing to fill that gap. The
mm,
court ordered, the court crafted remedy, Section 13A, suddenly lapsed. It was only meant to live for 24 months, so that framework had disappeared. Um, and one of the sad things about, without those exact words saying that there are exceptions for persons who are blind and visually impaired, South Africa cannot join a really great treaty called the Marrakesh Treaty, which is a treaty designed particularly to facilitate cross-border exchange of accessible format copies. So individuals could go and find accessible formats in Braille or large print or in audio across borders, but we could also sign onto online libraries and consortiums that have literally hundreds and thousands of accessible format copies available. So without that framework, that was just gone, and now we had this line being drawn in the legislation saying it's not an infringement anymore, but we don't really know, how this is going to work. We
Yeah.
have a real gap. And so that's why we went to court, and we had asked a couple of things. We said we need to hear this urgently, because you can't just assume the court will hear something urgently. You have to apply for it to be
Yes.
heard as an urgent matter. We said this needs to be urgent. The rights of persons with blind and visually impaired have been delayed for so long. They've been violated for so long. This is not something we caused. The president caused this. Blind
Mm.
SA didn't even know what the president was up to. We'd written to him. He didn't give us a solid response on what his steps were going to be. We had to wait until the deadline, so we couldn't bring this earlier. So it's urgent, and of course we've got this gap in the law. But we also said we want the court to say that the president had failed in his constitutional duty to do things diligently and without delay. There's actually a constitutional obligation on him to act diligently and without delay, and we want the court to recognize that and say this has happened. So he wasn't very impressed with us. We also wanted to compel the president to sign the CAB within 10 days of the order. But if the court didn't feel that that was the right approach, then to at least resuscitate that framework the court had created for us through 13A. So that is what we had asked for. A couple of days after we launched litigation in the Concord, the president referred the Copyright Amendment Bill to the Constitutional Court. It sounds like a very strange thing to do amidst this litigation, but he's perfectly entitled to do it. This is not the first time that CAB has appeared before the president for signing. It was on his
Mm.
desk in 2020 as well to sign, but he had a couple of problems with that. They were not related to our issues, but he
Yeah.
had some reservations. He sent it back to Parliament. He said, please go and fix this. Now it's back on his desk. He wants the court to decide whether or not Parliament has done a good job. He's perfectly allowed to do that. It's very bad timing, but he went ahead and sent that to the Concord, and that matter will be heard on the 19th and 20th of March this year, whether or not the CAB is constitutional in terms of the reservations he had. But what this meant for us is that it's physically impossible for the president to sign the CAB now. It's at the Concord, and so we had to change our what we were asking. He couldn't sign, so we said, all right, at least hear us on an urgent basis. This is still urgent. This is not our fault. Rights are being violated, but resuscitate 13A for us. That's all we're asking. Until CAB is signed, resuscitate that court-crafted exception that the court had put in place 2 years back. So our matter was heard in November last year. We received judgment in December, and the court agreed with us for now. They've only given us an interim order saying that until they finalize this matter, 13A will stay in place. So
Wow.
there is a partial victory,
Wow.
but there is still a final order coming, which should be any day. Yeah.
Sure. No, I mean that's great. That's great. I mean that's great. I mean even if I mean what what you got right now, it means that at least you guys are working towards something great. So I mean Christo, when I spoke to Christo, he had some high hopes. I mean I even asked him like if the worst happens, like this, the president doesn't sign it, and where to from here? And he says the president is going to be in orange overalls. I kind of laughed. So from the legal perspective, the worst happens. This doesn't go your way. What
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah. So in the worst case scenario, the Constitutional Court decides that there are some things Parliament must fix, and it sends the CAB back to Parliament, and that process could take years. And so our 19D, our solution is just held in limbo. And the president doesn't have to sign that until Parliament has approved it again and until it lands back on his desk. So that is the worst case scenario. It gets sent back. It's possible this happens. It's not that unlikely. There are, as you know, there are many, many people that are contesting the CAB.
Yeah.
Even in the matter that's be heard in March, we've got a couple of people, organizations that are intervening, saying different things about whether the CAB is right or not. So worst case scenario, they send it back. That's a couple of years. But we are very hopeful, especially because of what's happened with the interim order, that the court will at least give us
Yeah.
13A, the solution it crafted. Best case scenario, it says 19D that Parliament had created is ready to come into force, and maybe that comes into force, or something like it around the wording of it, um, while we wait for the Parliament to sort out the issue. So I think worst case scenario, we will still have a victory.
Yeah, yeah. No, that, I mean, that's great to hear. So, I mean, what do you think is the most like the most thing that holding this entire thing? Is it the people that are against it, or maybe is it the president? Or I mean, what's because I mean, if the court agree with you guys that this is constitutional and this is against the constitution rights of blind people, and the creatives, and then like I mean, what do you think is like it's the main holdup? You know what I mean? It's like a kid coming to you and saying that, mommy, can you buy me that toy? And you said, okay, I'll buy you the toy, and you have the money. I'll buy you the toy for Christmas, and then now you just like keep delaying, like delaying, maybe probably because of you budgeting that money for something, whatever. So why do you think that that's the case here?
Mm. A lot of organizations don't disagree with what we're asking for.
Yeah,
That many concede that the rights of persons who are blind and visually impaired are being violated. Even the president himself is not opposing what we want in terms of the
yeah,
relief we want to have that exception come into place. But CAB itself is highly contested.
yeah,
Uh, there are a lot of interests at stake. I think one of the biggest issues is the issue around fair use and whether or not creatives are getting the royalties that they're entitled to through this legislation. So I think there's a lot of politics around CAB that is holding up the CAB. But I don't think in terms of what Blind SA is asking is opposed that much. And I
yeah,
think the question before the court now is just, do they believe that what Parliament has done in terms of the exception it crafted is sufficient for it to come into force? Or should they just hang with what they had done 2 years back and let that be in its place until CAB is signed? So I definitely think the rest of CAB, is highly contested, and that's what's holding everything up. But I don't
yeah,
think many are against what we were asking for, the president included. Mm.
yeah. No, no, no. I completely hear you. So, like how big is the team, like the legal team that you guys do you work with other law firms, or is it just your organization or your law firm?
Yeah, so it's our organization that's representing Blind SA, but particularly with cases like this that go to the Constitutional Court, we have legal counsel. So we have two advocates that have been assisting us with drafting the papers. We also have a really incredible expert who's acting as a consultant acting as a consultant to us, Dr. Sunny Santani, who is really brilliant on international law and copyright generally. So it's quite a small team,
Yeah.
but it is also wonderful working with Blind SA because they are an incredible partner that is also very aware of the rights of people who are blind and visually impaired. They've been advocating for years, and so they're also a very valuable asset on this
So,
team.
if you don't mind, what's the name of the organization again? Just for the viewers.
Our organization is called Section 27.
Section 27. Okay, cool. So Section
Yes,
27, like, is it a law? Like, it's a law organization, like
yes, that's right.
with lawyers
Sorry.
and sorry, with lawyers and
Yes. So we are a public interest organization. So
okay.
it's an NGO, but we are also a law clinic, and we specialize. We're located in Braamfontein, Johannesburg, and we specialize in the rights to healthcare and the rights to basic education. And we are advocating for access to those, and we do that through a number of things like research. We have a great comms department that does a lot of advocacy, and then we have a team of lawyers. So I'm an attorney that specializes in education law, but the team in healthcare are lawyers that specialize in health rights. And so often we're going to court on cases that we feel will change the system. So it's not
Sure.
often that we just take a case on that will just impact one individual. Mostly we want to advocate, we want to make systemic change. And so the cases we take on try to affect change for everyone
Well,
in the system. We also have a pro bono walk-in clinic. So if anyone has issues on healthcare, access to healthcare, or the rights to basic education, they can come to our law clinic for free. A paralegal will sit with them and take the case, and we can advise them further on that. So it's all pro bono and really to serve the community on these two issues.
oh wow, that's amazing. So who are the law? Who are the law? Law practitioners. It's yourself and the two to say the two advocates, right? Or one advocate.
Yes, we have two advocates. So the practitioner is myself. It's also our program head, Dr. Ms. Zinat Suji, who is the head of our education unit. There's also a candidate attorney. She's now research at the moment, Fatima Lahir. And then we have two counsel. I'm not too sure if I'm allowed to say who the two counsel are at the moment
Okay.
publicly. I have to get
No,
their consent first. So I'm sorry
that's
about
fine.
that.
Completely understand. I completely understand. Listen, I'm really, 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 really excited about, to hear. I mean, I know that Crystal was quite excited and was quite, enthusiastic about this case and really hopeful about this case. Like hearing it from you now, I can understand why Crystal was so hopeful about the case. Um, so now the hearing is next. You said in March, right?
So the hearing on the referral of the copyright amendment bill to the court is on the 19th and 20th of March, but we are expecting a final order for our blind SA case any minute, hopefully in a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow, that's great. Listen, I don't want to waste any more of your time. I think you've given us, way more than enough, than what we expected. Thank you so much. I appreciate what you guys are doing and the work that you are doing for Blind SA and for the creatives. I truly, truly appreciate you guys, and we support you in every possible way. And I'm sure that even our sector supports you guys because this has been a big case, in our sector. Everyone has been talking about it, and it's been on news, newspapers, television, everywhere. So thank you so much. Are there any last words that you would like to say? Um, you know, because there are those who are starting to lose hope because well, in this case has always had those almost moments. It's almost and then it's not almost and then it's not. So this case has had so many almost moments. So is there anything that you wanna would like to say, like just to finish up, just to maybe take away those doubts, or maybe to the president himself, never know.
Firstly, just to say thanks, Andile, for your interest in the matter. I know
Mm,
anything related to copyright may be very obscure and technical, and we really appreciate your invitation that we come speak about the case. So thank you.
I'm honored.
Also to you and to all your viewers for their support. It's really, really appreciated, and we rely plenty on the support of the public for this.
Yeah.
I think parting words is you're absolutely right. Something about this case that was really eye-opening for me is how naive I was to how persons blind and visually impaired are really a marginalized sector of our community. Because they don't have access to books, many have not had a quality education, which means many have not gone on to study further. Many are unemployed. And so their vulnerability just escalates and escalates. And this case really, if the court finds in our favor, it has the potential to really unlock so much potential. It will be hundreds and thousands of books that not only help vindicate the right to basic education, but the right to equality, to dignity. There is so much attached to being able to read, even to it even advances your idea of belonging and your ability
Mm,
to participate culturally in the things that you're interested in. And so we're really hoping that with this case, that will be unlocked. That will be the key that unlocks the blockage. However, this is really just the small part of being able to access literature. It costs a fortune. Once we've passed this hurdle, the legislation is in place, but it costs a fortune to actually convert something. It's in the thousands to convert something into a format like Braille or large print.
I
It takes a
imagine.
very long time. And so there is really a call to just support our persons who are blind and visually impaired and to support that community in any way you can. Phone a
So,
school and ask if anything you can donate. After our legislation, our next step is to push for the signing of this Marrakesh treaty. And we already have a petition online through change.org, but we will certainly be making a lot of noise about the urgency of this. So we'd appreciate any support when those next steps happen.
thank you so much, Demi. I appreciate your time and appreciate your insight and everything. I believe that you've given us everything. Christo did give us some knowledge on this case. I believe that you coming in and just giving us, what you've given us, it just completes everything. I don't think that after this I would have to interview anyone about this. I think this is complete for now up until the end of March, or unless something happens within now and and your next hearing. So, Demi, thank you so much. Have a
Thank you.
fantastic day. All the best. We'll continue to support you guys, pray, whatever the situation might be. Thank you so much, Demi.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot, Andile.
Thank
All
you so
right,
much.
take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.